Here we are today at Town Hall. And today the Historical Commission is going through a box of papers that has been down in the inventory in the safe at Town Hall. It has been for quite a while, decades as a matter of fact. Now the first time I ever encountered the box was way back before the renovations were done at Town Hall. It was down in a lower safe along with a bunch of old papers everywhere. And I noticed what it was. I was looking for something totally different, had no idea this box existed. And I just peeked into it to see what it was, saw that it was Civil War records, went back down. Second time that I encountered the box was over at the Flag School when we were storing items while the renovations here at Town Hall were going on. And now I know that it was down in the lower safe here at Town Hall. We had brought it back here just for safekeeping. And a couple of weeks ago, we went and took a look down there to see if we could find the box, because a lot of us were aware that it existed, but we wanted to make sure that it still existed. You know how things get moved around and everything. Well, that night we did find it. And we identified that it was that box that used to be in Lower Town Hall, had been over at Flag, and now here it was back at Town Hall. So today, the commission wanted to take a look at what was inside of the box, really do a visual inventory to see what those records were and what they contained. Our first little bit of a surprise was what was printed on that wooden box on the cover, and it said House of Industry. And what was that? That was the name for the Poor Farm. So we found that the records that we were searching for was actually put into a box that belonged to the Poor Farm. Yeah, waste not. After all, yeah, we've got to use what we got. So it's a lovely box. It was substantial, and it has kept these records. We opened the box. We looked through the layers to look at the records that were from the Mass 16th Regiment, which was Holliston's regiment that was sent to the Civil War. They left in July of 1861. They kept really great records, as we're finding. But it's more than that. It's the Civil War regiment records, but it also tells a lot about the lives of the people who were involved, not only as soldiers in the Civil War, but also the peripheral stories that go with it. For instance, what was happening in Holliston up to that point? What was going on in Holliston during the war? What became of many of the soldiers? Some of them we find on epitaphs, gravestones in the graveyards of Holliston. Now we know a bit more about their lives. We also know about what happened to some of them afterwards. There's all the wonderful side stories that you learn about, for instance, the receipts in here that we find about what the men may have owed to the sutler, the man who provided the food, or the laundress, if they had any bills that they had to pay up on that. What money was paid to families in Holliston, because the town of Holliston had made the promise to many of the men that were signing up for the regiment that they would support them if they were killed in action during the war. So the thing is, we have records on that. We have the daily records about what the soldiers themselves were going through during the war. There are daily sheets, there are receipts, there are lists, there are what happened to certain soldiers and all. And it's just a treasure trove of town history, not only about the soldiers that were going off to the war and what happened with them, but also what was happening back in Holliston at the same time. And that's what's really important, because the war was not only on the battlefield, but it affected also town history and the people who were enduring the town during the time that they were away. So it is really a great treasure trove. But the other thing is that what we have found as we go down carefully through the layers of all the receipts and the papers and the logbooks and all, we found underneath everything a lot of receipts and history about the House of Industry, about the poor in Holliston and how they fared, how they were treated. And that is another whole story. This is kind of like a bit of a bonus that we find underneath the Civil War records. We also find the records of the poor and indigent in Holliston. And that in itself is a valuable historical record in and of itself. So while we go through these records, it's going to take a very long time to figure out what all those records are going to tell us about what the lives and the history, how they endured that particular time in Holliston history. But we're finding records on the local militia, men's organization that went right up to the early 20th century. And some of those names are the same as the ones that we find on the regiment rolls. So we have a lot of history to go through. And it's going to take us quite a while to figure out all of the history that we see in this box. So stay tuned. Research will be ongoing. Yeah, this box has traveled a little bit around town.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, and finally we have tracked it down. And now we're ready to take a look at what's inside. I find that interesting. You know, the Historic Records Town Clerk, under the auspices of it, that was added, so luckily we were able to find it, and it was a little easier. But I do remember seeing it way back when. Yeah, way back when, over 20 years ago, my first encounter with it, downstairs in the old safe before all of the renovations were done. Yeah, and then it went over to Flag School, and then brought back here, and put in the safe downstairs, and of course we didn't know if it was still there or whether or not it was gone forever. And then we made the discovery that yes, it still exists, and there it is. Marvelous.
See what it says then?
Now, I don't know if this was the one box that they would carry around with them or not, but the story goes that when they were retreating from the battle at Brandywine Creek, something like their station, Brandywine Station, yeah, that the man in charge of the records strapped the box, they said, to his back and crawled to safety. So, and I don't see any bullet holes or anything in it, or sword slashes. Yeah, see Scotch tape, but not yeah.
Scotch tape. I'd rather see a bullet hole than Scotch tape.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, like a little damp rag, do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah, I think that would be all right. Yeah.
Before we dig in.
Yeah, very light one. So it does say something on it.
Holliston House of
Pancakes.
what is this? Holliston.
Yeah.
House of
Industry.
Yes.
All right. And do you know what the Holliston House of Industry was?
No.
Poor farm?
Poor Farm.
Really?
Yes, that was the name for the Poor Farm.
What's the connection?
Yeah.
It may have been an available box. Have you ever stored
that is it. Okay, so there's our first discovery before we even open it.
Yeah.
That waste not, want not.
Have you ever stored something in an old wine box? And,
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Cigar box?
A cigar box, yeah.
100 years from now, somebody's going to say that.
That's what it was.
He drank
Never
a lot.
heard of this
He
one.
drank a lot because he
And
always
this is
Holliston House of Industry.
Industry.
Holliston House of Industry.
Yeah, which was located, in 1865 and 75. If you look at 1875 maps of Holliston and Ashland, you will find that the House of Industry was a little block on the 1875 map of Holliston, right smack dab in the middle of Ashland. Holliston in 1846 was rather angry about the state creating the town of Ashland. And our House of Industry, the Poor Farm, was over in the land that became Ashland. And yeah, it was really neat. And so the thing is, they hung on to that little bit of land to about 1890, and finally in town meeting at some point, see if it is of interest to the people of Holliston to move the House of Industry back within the boundaries of the town of Holliston. And it was around 1890 before they did it.
Wow,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it's really a neat story. It's all these little intertwining
The box
it
itself,
seems-
the box itself here
Yes.
is
Yes.
worth the price of admission.
So, looking at it, I said, I don't know how anybody could have strapped it on his back. So now we have that solved.
Yeah, there was
But-
clearly something else that he
Yes,
strapped
there was
on his
something
back.
else there. And the-
Likely a soft bag of some kind or even a
That's
knapsack.
that's what I would figure.
Yeah, that's what I would
yeah.
expect too.
Figure, but with all the records in there, it's going to be quite interesting to figure that out. But I'm sure that that's what it was.
Yeah.
But isn't it nice that Holliston was repurposing old equipment?
Waste not want.
Yeah,
huh?
waste not, want not, and they used this box from there. So
Neat.
when they went in there, well, the House of Industry, as we know it, probably when it was moved over to Holliston, probably all of the equipment and everything that they had over there, and then the new House of Industry in Holliston was on Washington Street, East Holliston. I think the number is 245 or thereabouts. The big old farmhouse, and that became the new house of. I think they had a different name, Holliston Farm.
Okay.
Yeah, for Holliston Farm, and but that to me that is really neat too. That's a little bit of that, because when I first encountered that box, I was looking up other records. I was looking at some old selectmen records, but in that same vault near this box were the House of Industry and the records of the overseers of the poor. That was great reading. That was fabulous reading too, about how the other half lived in Holliston. It was fabulous, and I now worry today. My worry about the location of this box is now gone. Now I worry about those overseers of the poor records, whatever happened to them, because it really told a lot of history of Holliston there. So there it is. There it is. All this time, put in a nice
do the
protected
honors.
box.
All right.
Frank, I think you
Watch-
should.
Do we have some
Watch
drum
my
roll
hands.
music?
Yeah.
All right. I just want to be cautious of the hinges back here too.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
If you want to lean it on anything.
I would love to lean it on. Maybe some of those books.
Yeah.
You want law books?
Yeah.
Yeah. Law books will
Law
do
books
it.
would be good because they're nice and fat.
Nice and heavy. Yeah.
Just.
Yeah.
6 of them?
No, I don't think
Well,
we
let's
need
see.
that.
Yeah, we're gonna need a few
we're gonna need
more.
A couple
Yeah.
more. Yeah. Maybe another. Yeah. Maybe another 3
Yeah.
would do it. Give ourselves some support here.
That is
Support of our
so-
decisions.
There.
Yep, there we
That's
go.
good.
All right.
I don't know,
There it is.
Frank. Dig in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sarah gave us
Yes.
distinct instructions on how to proceed, and I did
Yes.
explain to her that the contents, the filing system being used here could be affectionately known or appropriately known as muddle.
She wanted to put back in the same order, but
She wanted to put back in the same order. I don't know. Do we want to try?
Thank goodness
Shall we just do an unboxing and then go through and
It's
and
is it
inventory?
a vertical stack?
it does seem to be.
Okay. Yeah.
So 1855, Town of Holliston, in something of care of possibly something. And
All
Town
here,
of
yeah.
Holliston of 1855. This appears to be the probably organized thread. This could be coffin. I don't know what this is. $4 for a coffin.
Equipment.
It could be equipment, but it's pre-war.
But it's pre-war, which is
But
interesting.
It's
Yeah, or did it belong to somebody who was in the
I
regiment that
don't
was a
know.
coffin builder that ended up in the regiment?
two spit cups.
Yeah.
This is going to be. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to pass that
Yeah,
over.
let me see
You
if
wanna
I
just line
can
them up
figure
in
it
the
out.
middle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to keep
I don't want to, and things. Now we've got all of these, as you mentioned, Joanne, tied with ribbons, and I don't want to.
Yes.
I don't want to go untying them just yet.
No, now I was able to slip one off once upon a time,
Right.
but that's another story. Yeah. Town of Holliston in use with A&T.
Okay. Oh, come on.
Oh yeah, Andrews and Thompson.
Okay.
They were
Merchant.
purveyors of many different items, dry
Okay.
goods. Yeah, but why this is in here for? Well, no, the thing is that it only has a few pages.
Your returns, monthly and quarterly returns of soldiers, Company B,
Mm-hmm.
16th Regiment, 1862 to 1864. So those are muster returns or muster rolls. So that's
They're delicate.
yeah, they're delicate, but that's going to give you a
Yeah.
a monthly and quarterly report of
Right.
who is in the company and,
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
let you be the
okay, yeah.
liner upper.
Liner upper,
Yep.
yes. Yeah, monthly and quarterly returns, yeah, so it's like the daily or weekly diary.
Right. Now here's enlistment roll, muster roll. This is interesting. Look, did he write on the, no, it bled through. But it was apparently tied on and he wrote this and
Wrote it and then
then
slipped back
tied it
over.
up
Yeah.
because the ink has bled through the ribbon.
No kidding.
Yeah, but enlistment,
Hastily.
so we're gonna have to be careful about this one. Enlistment, muster out of Company B, 16th Regiment. All right, let's see. Which, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
even touch that yet. It appears to be lined paper, so it may be another muster roll of some kind.
I would say, yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Enrollment,
Yeah,
it's enrollment.
enrollment. Wow. Wow.
okay, and that could be the original enrollment of active.
Enrollment of active something.
Oh my
Okay, this
God.
appears to be pay records to each person and the time when the same were paid. This could be disbursements. Oh, disbursements in aid of families of volunteers by the town of
Yes.
Holliston and the county of Middlesex. Sums paid.
That is important because they, the way that they filled the regiment in the beginning was to convince some of these people to join up, but many of them were married with families, and they were hesitant to do so, and
Sure.
so the town made the promise that if they did sign up and something happened to them, that the town would then support their families, which they did, and there were some that were still being supported even up to 1900.
And it has the name of the individuals
Yeah.
and then the names of the persons assisted.
Yeah,
So
yes.
Appleton, first name is Appleton Adams, April 5th, 1862.
There you go.
Member of regiment, and he was actually in the 14th, not the 16th. Company D, maybe?
Yes. Yeah,
And it lists his wife and his children.
and the thing was that they figured at the time there was only going to be the 16th that they were going to have to
Right.
deal with, but then, quickly the war became more than just a 3-month, visit to the South. And they did support everybody afterwards,
Yeah.
which probably galled a few people. Because it did, but other towns did it too. I think Medway also had that arrangement as well.
This is the state aid papers, 1860 to 1866, and certificates of muster. So that,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, Joanne, I'm gonna get ahead of you here.
Now the thing is, we are just. Are we
I
still
think
stacking?
just no, I'm not trying to track the
Oh,
order
okay.
in which you're taking
All
them
right,
out
good.
because
Yeah.
they're all
Yeah.
bundled up very nicely. And,
Oh, okay, good.
And where they're stacked like this, I mentioned this to Sarah, and she said, "Don't worry about it," because I think
Okay,
she was anticipating more of a file.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Good. I know.
That is simply
I
not the
hang
way.
on every word that she writes.
Right, but everything is just piled
I
in
rely
here.
a lot on what
This
she
is
says.
receipt for $125 to William Hamilton for bounty.
Oh, a bounty paid.
Bounty.
And William Hamilton was one of the Irish immigrants.
Okay, so he didn't.
Hamilton, he was
He
Irish.
didn't enlist out of patriotic sentiment. He enlisted because cold hard cash was involved.
Well,
as many of them did.
because remember what happened for the war, that Holliston's shoe industry,
Mm-hmm.
boot and shoe industry, was heavily reliant on southern and western trade.
Yep.
And the thing was that a lot of the factories were not producing. The stone wall that is along Washington Street, that is nice slab stone
Yep.
wall, was a make work project for the ones that did not have employment at the time, and so many of them were obligated or forced to go into the military because
date
the
on
bounty.
that? Yeah, what's the date
because
on
of the
that? Because
bounty.
I know early on the enlistments were easy to come by, and later on as the war
Oh,
got
for the
longer,
first few, yes.
yeah, longer and bloodier, it took payment to
Oh yes, to get anybody else,
particularly
because
once the draft, once the government instituted a draft, and
Well-
then you could buy substitutes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what happened. That a lot of people were not working in Holliston because of the boot trade was going out there. But a few did get contracts later, like John Batchelder, and he got a government contract, and they have
Ooh,
since found
with
some of
stamps,
his
with
boots
stamps.
on sunken ships. from the Civil War era. So we know that they did get through.
Sultana and
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Ooh. Ooh.
drive Joanne nuts over here.
$100.
I know. The suspense.
Just fold it up when you're done with it. Put it back in the box. Don't say anything.
Okay, we'll put this one back. Another bounty.
Yep.
Another bounty, okay. Yeah, yeah. William Hamilton. The Hamiltons lived on Pleasant Street.
These are muster rolls of some kind.
Yeah.
They seem to go together, so I'm going to pass them over together, even though they're not bound together. But
And I wonder what the name
Occupations.
is.
Yeah.
You know, why somebody
Occupation.
assigned under him. It looks like maybe Peter.
was he
Um,
literate? Could he sign his
Peter
own name?
Donnelly.
Or was Donnelly some kind of an enlistment clerk, possibly?
Possibly, yeah. I wonder.
Enlistment
Yeah,
agent
it's hard to
clerk.
say what it is.
Those are beautiful stamps.
I know. I was just looking at it. It says yeah, that's probably worth everything in them box.
Yeah, little seals.
Seals over here and everything. Yeah, yeah. The stories on those, the bounties and everything, that did go to a lot of the Irish immigrants. The
Here's
Farley
where-
brothers.
Here's
for
where we get our
instance.
first conservation issue. This is bound up with an elastic
Should we
band.
go deep on that here?
Yeah, we can do that.
lift
Yeah.
out?
Okay, so
All right, this.
so here come the books. So this is Company B, 16th Regiment, company orders,
Yeah.
mass volunteers, and we
Well-
took a quick look at this the other
Yeah.
night, but
But what intrigued me about this was these were books that were all manufactured, printed up for the use of.
Right.
Yeah.
clothing, and this
Yeah.
is labeled as Captain William A. Amory, Company B. Now, Amory was not the first captain. Mason was the first captain. Amory was the second
Yeah.
captain, I
yeah.
think.
So, yeah. Perhaps he was the one maybe responsible for
But he had
the
probably,
records.
well, he may have been responsible when this book was opened.
Right. Yeah.
Clothing account book.
Yeah. I know.
And it's lined out in the side with, it looks like, at least initially, a page for each individual
Each
to
individual.
show
yeah.
what they were issued. Although it doesn't, that part has
Yes.
not been completed. It's been
Yeah.
lined out but never filled in.
Yeah, for the
Until we get
16th,
over to here.
Yeah.
when they first got going, the uniforms were made here locally, and they made a bit of a mistake
Well,
on the uniforms in the beginning because I guess the word hadn't gotten out from Washington.
mass militia.
But they had a local tailor that made their first uniforms, but unfortunately they made them in gray.
which was which was the color worn by the Massachusetts militia.
Yeah,
in
right,
the
yeah,
1850s.
exactly.
So gray
Hey,
was,
your
gray
word
was
didn't get
gray
out
was
too
a common color.
Yeah.
The U.S. troops were wearing blue, but
Right.
a lot of the militia companies
Right, we're doing local. Yeah,
doing local were wearing other things.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I would love I would be always, if we get down underneath the paperwork and there's an original uniform tucked in the bottom of the box. But I doubt we'll be that fortunate. But
Yeah, yeah.
Calm down.
calm down. But this has a list of all the names.
The commentary line there
And-
is where the fun part is.
And what they were issued. So
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
being issued well, by this time, blue flannel sack coats,
Yeah.
unlined,
Good, good.
trousers, shirts, drawers, so they were wearing underwear, stockings, wool blankets,
Yeah.
rubber blankets, haversacks, canteens,
Wow.
shelter tents, greatcoats, and shoes. That's what's listed.
Fantastic.
That's what's listed.
Yes, I figured they must have corrected something along the way. You know, I don't know how far those gray uniforms
I
got.
don't see a date. Okay, this is 1862. I was
Yeah.
looking for the date. This is 1862. So by then
Yes.
they had. But there's a sheet of paper lying in here with more information on it, more names. Loveday, Williams, Fales, Insulin, May, Dunton, Gassett, Cole.
Gassett. Now there's there's one. He's a story. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morse, Hart, Bailey, Flagg, Hadley, Maston, Pettis, Clark, Ware. Just last names, no first names. We could.
Oh
tie them
darn it!
together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, we can figure
yeah.
it out.
But all the last names are familiar, and we may be able to cross-reference them from some of the other records.
This, I
elsewhere.
think, may have just been a worksheet of some kind, although
Yeah.
there are some sums up at the top. Otis
Yeah.
W. Richardson.
Oh, Otis W. Richardson. Yes, he before the war, He was Holliston's first ace pitcher on the baseball team.
Ah, well.
Yes.
It looks like he was
How'd you
paid,
know
looks
that?
like he was,
Why would I know that?
looks like he was paid $3.29.
Good for him.
Well, but Samuel Bicknell received $28.27.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't say what for.
Yeah.
My old friend William Gaylord, $3.03.
I know, yeah. That,
Interesting. That's what threw me the other night when looking at this. They refer to himself as Willie. He clearly refers to himself as Gardner Gaylord.
yeah,
The WM he's WM for William is in front, and then Gardner Gaylord. And that's what when I was looking for him is the same way here in the book. So apparently he didn't go by the William.
this is a lot like meeting up with old friends again.
It is.
You know, the familiar faces
But
and
it's-
names that you
but
look
it-
at nowadays.
But it's also telling you things about them that you didn't know.
Didn't know. That's right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Sure, they're on a list of soldiers, mass soldiers and sailors in the books and everything, but there are side stories on these
Right.
people about who they were before, what they became after,
Right.
what happened to them.
Right.
Some that didn't make it back.
Right. Like
and-
Gardner
but-
Gaylord.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
These were people with lives and
Right.
histories of their own, and sometimes it didn't work out so well.
Yeah, for instance, like on really important on here, for instance, is like it does tell like soap maker, mechanic.
Yeah.
What was a
Right.
mechanic back then?
Right.
He worked with tools
Tools.
instead of as a
Right.
farmer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Could have been
they
any-
didn't
he
work
could
with
have-
automobiles.
No.
Or yeah.
He could have
I
been
think it's
anything.
anybody who worked with their hands. Your
Right.
computers,
Yeah.
tinsmiths, blacksmiths,
Yeah.
they were all called mechanics.
Mechanics.
Yeah, George Daniels, manufacturer. Yeah, mechanic, stable
That's-
keeper, teamster, clerk. I mean, they're all
That's
these.
interesting. Manufacturer almost suggests he had his own business.
Well, that's it.
He
It
may have.
It may have, and it could have been maybe the way he wanted to describe himself too, and he built some small object. And
Yeah.
a lot of times that's what it would be. But the names on these
Yeah.
people, it just brings out sometimes ones that you have written across
Now
elsewhere.
this is interesting. This is the same basic book as what you have
Yeah.
there, Joanne,
Yeah.
except where that little paper label is pasted in the middle, it has been printed on here during the manufacturing process, company descriptive books. So these were being sold.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
These books were being sold for the use of the army. So there's probably thousands of these from the various regiments
Various
and companies in existence.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark Crosby.
But they
Yeah,
just-
that's another one that. Yeah.
Descriptive, but this is descriptive book. So that one was repurposed as a clothing issuance book, but this one is being used as the quote unquote descriptive book of
Description
Company
book.
B.
Yeah. Which we're getting
And
into the
starts out with a
real-
list of commissioned officers, what happened to them, where they are. So here's James Mason, Captain, July 2nd, date of appointment July 2nd, 1861, which was when the regiment was.
July 2nd. That's right.
Mustered.
That's mustered, and that's I think the day that they even left on the train.
Yep. And
yeah.
remarks resigned and honorably discharged
Yeah.
in service of the U.S. as per special orders 94, which you could probably track down,
Yeah.
dated 94, dated something Army of the Potomac, July 5th, 1862. So he served for about a year.
Yes. Yeah. Some of them were only 3 months.
And
it depended.
then William A. Amory, first lieutenant, July 2nd, 1861, appointed captain and commission, July 6th, 1862. So this is,
There it
and
is.
bang,
One, yeah.
it's right in
Yeah.
there.
I know of one Holliston resident that was in the U.S. Navy, whole different story, but he was signed on for 5 years.
Yeah.
But there was a reason for that. One of these backstories.
Did
As
the
to
judge,
why.
did the judge order that?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, it had to do with judicial. Yeah, there's a judicial reason.
Judicial-
In other words, 5 years ought to finish him off.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It didn't. That's the irony of it.
But
yeah.
you go from
But that's
there-
another. Yeah, that's another great side story.
You go from here to a list of non-commissioned officers, and the first name up there is Benjamin Bridges.
Oh
who-
gosh, yeah.
Who appears, so he's enlisted as a sergeant and then commissioned second lieutenant, because he also appears over here further down the list as first lieutenant.
I've run
So-
across him all through the annals of Holliston
Yep.
history, Benjamin Bridges. Yes, he touched on many
He rose in the
points
ranks.
of history and lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I wonder if he's out there in the graveyard. I'm going to go look him up. I
Now,
think
this
he
is
is.
just Company B.
This is
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
company
it's
B.
just company- yeah.
This register of men
Right.
transfers. These
Yeah.
are the daily records.
Oh.
Register of men transferred.
Right.
These are the day. This is the day-to-day minutia of running a company of infantry and keeping track of everything.
Well, that's it. But those side stories, the comments.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, here's Calvin Rockwood Jr., sergeant, discharged March 5th, 1863, by whose order? Harry E. Brown, whoever he was, where? Portsmouth Grove, Rhode Island.
came in by boat probably.
Remark on
Yeah.
surge certificate disability. So,
Injured and sent. Yeah.
yeah,
and
injured,
they were
and,
quite-
injured
yeah.
and sent home.
Yeah, there was a somewhat steady
With death
stream
certificate?
of people coming back at that time, and that's one. Unfortunately, newspapers locally were not being published. You got the Boston papers, which we now have. You can get digitally, which is great because they do have some stories that coincide with their experiences. Which is great, which is only, in the last 20 years that we've had access to that.
Right.
But all the little side stories about what the experiences they had down in Virginia, for instance,
Yep.
especially that the battle in June of 1862 where we lost several men all on the same day, which
Glendale.
was in one of these
Battle of
books
Glendale,
here.
I think, and
Yeah.
here's the register of deaths right here.
Yes.
Here's Walker, July 2nd,
There he is.
1863,
Gettysburg,
Gettysburg.
killed in action.
Killed in action, final.
Final statement sent. Now I don't know remarks. Unfortunately, there's not their
Final
descriptive is
statements.
all final
Yeah, I know.
statements sent. But,
I know he may be out there for all we.
But
for-
here's
we have to keep
down
looking.
south.
here's
Yeah.
1862. This would be Battle of Fair Oaks, Virginia, killed in action.
There's those,
Um,
the three of them
James
right there.
Speakman,
Yeah.
Caleb Waite, and Albert Harding.
Yes, all three of them. Hunting, is it? Yeah, Albert
Hunting,
Hunting.
Hunting,
Yeah, all three of them died then, and
Yep.
and of course, Powell T. Wyman died was killed a few days
He was
later.
killed at Glendale.
And there's a huge story because
Right.
I
He
found
was-
that one in the digital newspapers
Yep.
about the fact that Waldo Claflin, teenager who
Yep.
was, I don't know what his position was, brought back his belongings to Boston,
Yep.
and they had this huge
Well, he's buried.
military.
He's buried at
Mount Auburn,
Mount
and I have
Auburn.
visited
Yes,
the grave.
yes.
Yes, I visited the grave and pictured it. But you
because
also
I know they buried him down there on the battlefield,
and
then it
brought
was-
him up 2 weeks
and they
later.
found him-
Dug him up 2 weeks later, and those were Holliston men
Yeah,
that were
went
listed
back
as the
and
ones
found
who
him.
did that. And the big funeral and everything. But Frank, you were also the one that put me onto that tragic love story about Powell T. Wyman.
tragic or sordid? I don't know. It depends on your-
Both, yeah. It was sordid back then, tragic now.
Yeah.
Great story.
Yeah.
though. Oh my gosh, it was
Yeah,
a
Here's
Powell-
my,
fabulous.
here's my theory on Walker.
Yeah.
He
Okay,
was-
all right. I know.
He was decapitated
Yeah.
at Gettysburg,
Yeah.
and they generally did not ship.
It was early
bodies
in the
up.
battle too. It wasn't the last day of the
Right.
Second
battle.
day.
Took a day.
Yeah.
Well, out on
And
the
if you,
Harrisburg Road.
if you did not send him home, you would send papers to his family and to the town.
Oh.
Final statement sent.
Oh.
Would that be what that means?
That could be.
And maybe just some artifact like what Waldo Claflin
Yeah.
did with the belongings
Well,
for Powell T. Wyman,
you
and
would-
bring it back, and that's what they would
You would
bury as
inventory. You would
You know,
inventory.
that's-
You would inventory his belongings. Right?
Yes, and I think that even locally, even if they brought back a fingernail, for heaven's sakes, they would consider that enough.
I think
yeah.
Oh,
traditionally.
look, okay, these are all final.
Yeah, that's a good
I think
point. Yeah.
traditionally what they did was if you were killed in action, they would, auction off your belongings. Here, he's got a shirt, he's got a
Yes,
pair of
yeah,
pants,
right,
he's
yeah.
got a this, he's got a that,
Yeah, yeah.
and your buddies in the regiment would bid on them, and they'd send home a statement, a list of what here's what he had, here's what we sold,
Okay, you sure?
here's the money.
I think that's a good point. That
Yeah.
it wasn't his whole remains that were brought back, but maybe an artifact of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could very well be.
Yeah.
I can see
Yeah,
that.
maybe they'd send home. I mean, this
Yeah.
is pure speculation, but I know it was done at other times. But it just you wouldn't
Right.
you couldn't send the body home.
I can't understand.
You couldn't really
not from the
effectively send the
battlefield.
possessions home.
Not when the whole battle was still going
Right.
on. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So that
That's
could
probably
be.
what it was. Some
More-
piece or part of him, not his head.
More
but yeah.
research to be
Didn't
done.
find
Yeah, no, you couldn't find his head again.
Now Benjamin
Yeah,
Benjamin
that's
Durfee
a
up here
good
on the other
point,
hand,
yeah.
this goes as late as June 22nd, 1864, and he's listed as missing in action
Right.
in Petersburg, Virginia. Nothing
Yes.
more. Just MIA. So
Right. And the thing is that, yes, I do believe that Sewell Fisk was brought back, but he died in a hospital in New Jersey.
Right.
So that's a whole different situation.
Yeah.
I can't imagine in the second day of Gettysburg that they even were able to go back out after the battle to find out who was where. It just doesn't.
they did a pretty
Stand to
good
reason.
job, but
Well, yeah.
still, but most of them they buried down there. There were a few.
Well, yeah, Ben, you had found about 3,900 troops were buried at Gettysburg. You know, I think it's 3,900.
Hastily buried,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're hastily buried, and a lot of them were out on the
July.
battlefiel for
Yeah.
a long time.
It
And
was
this
July,
is July.
Middle of July. You were not.
No, you didn't last
passed,
long
You
in-
passed
yeah.
your sell-by date pretty quickly.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Best Buy is, it's a matter of hours.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. I bet you that's what it was. I mean, they would have taken anything back.
I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
torturing poor Joanne here.
I
Pass
know.
this
Well,
over,
no,
but,
no.
But here's the descriptive role.
The comments over there are just
Now, this is
Now,
this
we
is
can
Rich.
find
Oh.
Walker in here.
yep.
yeah.
Was he an original enrollee?
I think he was. Yes.
Then he should be
yeah.
in alphabetical order.
Yeah. I think he was.
I'm just flipping down because I remember looking through this briefly the other night.
And if you happen to notice going through, I do want to find out what the actual role was for Waldo Claflin, because he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And
Walker,
yeah, and
Charles?
he his mother didn't want him to go, but and he came back and actually re-enlisted.
Mechanic.
Mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, mechanic. Yeah.
July 2nd,
Yeah.
60.
Killed in action at Gettysburg.
Oh, that's his enlisted, but nothing beyond that.
Yeah, killed in action July 2nd, 1863 at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Final statement sent July 29, 1863.
I think you got a good point there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's paperwork for
Yep.
KIA.
Yep.
Yeah, or maybe there was just some remnant, a personal piece of his belongings or something sent back. And I bet you.
Who was the other
bet
one
you
you were
that
looking
was
at?
enough.
Caleb, who was Claflin?
Well, Waldo Claflin was
Waldo
not
Claflin.
killed. He was the teenager that brought back Powell T. Wyman's belongings to Boston. And the thing
Right.
was that he brought back everything. His mother was was in great disapproval of him going at all.
I don't see him here, is he?
Yeah, so would he be under another category, or would he not be enlisted
if he was
like
a teenager,
that? He was a teenager.
he
Yeah.
might not be on the roster, but he might still have been there. I know my
Yes.
my own great grandfather
Yeah.
went with Company A of the 45th Mass, and they went down to New Bern, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And he's shown on the muster rolls,
Right.
but he was underage. He was only 17. However, his brother-in-law was the lieutenant colonel of the regiment.
Yeah.
So he got taken along as I don't think he ever carried a musket. He got taken along as an aide de camp.
Yeah, for instance, and here's one that I got out of records from the sources at the Historical Society. Henry S. Bailey, drummer, 1st Maryland Regiment, discharged June 1862, but re-enlisted August 1862 in the 1st Mass Regiment as a drummer. Killed December 1862 by the falling of the barracks that he was in, age 15 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I
think
mean,
they
just,
would-
as, yeah.
They wouldn't take you to carry a musket until if they knew about it.
Well, that's it. And then Waldo went back,
But
and he re-enlisted after he came back. I think he made amends with his mother probably, and he re-enlisted, but he was taken a prisoner at one point. I'm not sure exactly where. I might have it in here, but he's also interesting because he did shoe manufacturing after the war, and it's another one of those post-war stories
Yeah.
that's really interesting. He holds a patent
Oh.
for a certain innovation to a shoe.
Another interesting thing, looking at this list.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said, there's one person on this page that's 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
Everybody else is in the
Right.
5 foot
Yes,
category.
you're right. Yeah.
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 Five.
Yeah. That's the other thing on there.
5'6", 5'8"
Yeah.
seems to be the common.
Yeah.
There are some who are shorter, some who are taller, but there's one
Oh,
who's
yeah.
5'10".
Oh, he
But-
almost made it.
5'11".
He's 5'11".
Yeah.
Charles Daniels, he was a tall one. But you're right.
Yeah. Maybe that was a hazard, But I
6
mean,
foot was an exception.
yeah.
Not unknown, but an exception. But this even gives you who enlisted by. So most of these, you can tell when they were initial enlistments, they're all enlisted by Mason, by
Yeah.
Captain Mason.
Now the thing is, I do have here transcribed about from the Journal of Company B, Mass. I must have gotten it out of the Mass Soldiers and Sailors, but it says out of the Journal of. And May 1st, marched across the Rappahannock and bivouacked at Chancellorsville, and the 2nd was in action also on the 3rd, recrossed the river. It goes, I mean, it's much longer than I'm going to, but it ends up in Gettysburg. Harper's Ferry, they talk about, going through on the 16th to near Harper's Ferry. And it just gives the whole rundown. And I think it was a transcription out of those records, of course, but I didn't get this out of any of that. But it probably came from the records from Post 6 GAR that ended up at the Historical Society.
Now, there are a few in here who are not from Holliston. interestingly enough.
Yes,
But
that
when-
is true. Those
but-
came in later. Yeah.
Well, no, actually, these guys know.
Who? Which
They
one?
were all enlisted at the same time, all enlisted July 2nd, 1861. I'm looking here, so there's
Who is it?
William Goodwin's from Sterling.
Weird.
James Goodson, Franklin. All on the same page, interestingly enough. William
That's
Griffin,
interesting.
Boston.
Were they kind of like the additions
Some
to
of
fill
them,
it out?
Well, I'm looking. Some of them, it looks like, some of them, not all of them, but some of them. So, William Griffin from Boston, mechanic, appointed corporal. William
Now I want to know who they
Wilson,
are. Yeah.
Acton, Maine, appointed corporal. I'm
Could
wondering whether they were putting in a leavening of guys with a little bit of military experience to be non-coms.
Maybe. Or there was some story about, was it, I think,
Yeah.
one of the towns around.
These are older guys who got a little bit
Yeah.
of these are
Oh, I
older
know what
guys,
it was,
Saco,
yeah.
Maine.
Were they guys that were working in the shoe shops down here or something?
Could
Yeah,
be.
I don't know.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. Well, 1860 census might also give us a little
Albert
idea.
Hunting, our first casualty there, he didn't come from Holliston, he came from Princeton.
Princeton. Wow. Well, yeah. The Framingham Regiment, such as it was not really like one regiment. They were scattered throughout several other
Yeah.
regiments. Was it just to even it out? Hey, you need a few more
Well, it
guys, and
might
here's
have been.
a few leftovers.
As I say, it also might have been where you
Yeah.
have a bunch of guys who have no military experience going in, that you say, okay, this guy over here, he served 15 years ago, he enlisted for
The
6
Mexican,
months.
yeah, the Mexican-
he went to Mexico or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Not everybody came back as a general. So
This-
they're throwing
this
some of
could be
these guys, I mean, this is pure speculation, but they're throwing some of these guys, here's another one. Chester Lesher?
Sure.
Oh!
Sure.
He's
Uxbridge,
No,
and
but the thing
appointed
is,
corporal.
I found him in the Holliston U.S. Census of 1850, and also there was some hint that he was listed as mulatto.
Okay.
All right, mulatto, the
interesting.
whole
well,
family.
He's listed here as dark,
Yes.
black eyes,
Yep.
dark hair.
Yes. And what Indian,
Okay.
Native American,
Yes.
or
Could-
African American? It's not clear, but I also found him after the war in Ashland. But the family was in Holliston in 1850, and probably on the 1860
Something-
U.S. Census too. Yes, I met up with Chester.
Something, the
Was-
Battle of Chancellorsville, May
Yeah.
of 1863.
So was he? He was in the 16th rolls.
yeah.
Now there you go. Now there's an interesting person. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Point-
Yes, I do remember
Yeah,
Chester,
yeah, he
and
was- yeah.
he was like I don't know, 10 or 12 years old in 1850.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
he would have been at the
he's
perfect
20,
age.
He's 22.
There you go.
on
All
this
right.
muster.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so you're meeting up with these people and crossing paths with them, which
Yeah.
is just, I mean, it's so rich. You want to know who they were and more about them.
Yeah, no, this
Yeah.
book
Yeah.
by itself would be
Yeah.
is
Especially if you'd seen them like before the war, there was Chester as a kid living in Holliston with his family, listed as mulatto on the
Right.
U.S. Census. It says,
Right.
wow. And for me,
and tucked in here we have a couple of unused blank forms.
ooh, yeah, yeah.
And it's an enlistment blank.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Final statement.
Yeah.
And we just talked about final statements, but final statement sent. I wonder if that's got to be something different.
Well, I don't know if
This
is
isn't-
that
this
what they
is-
fill out for a final statement.
Well, it says final statement on the back here, and it says, I certify on honor that Captain Blank of Company Blank of the Blank Regiment who volunteers to the state of Blank, born in the state of, of age blank, years blank, feet blank, you get the picture, has enrolled in the service of the United States. So this is an enlistment and then a place for him to sign.
Well, the thing is,
And a place to put down his indebtedness to the sutler and his laundress.
wow. Now, what a statement! What a
We
statement!
put that to keep Sarah happy. We'll put that back where we found it. But look at down at the bottom. He is indebted to blank sutler, blank dollars.
Oh
He is
my
indebted to blank
God.
laundress, blank dollars. That's
He-
the discharge, I think.
I hope he didn't die owing any
Well,
money
no,
to
you
the
might-
laundress.
Well, now wait a minute. He is now entitled to a discharge. Okay, so this is the final statement, I think.
It looks like it is, yeah.
Having
well,
honestly,
sure,
faithfully in his company
Yeah.
in the present date is now entitled to a discharge by reason of
There you
whatever.
go. Yes, there it is there.
So this is the settlement. So the last
Well,
paid.
The paper would go back with him and maybe with an artifact, maybe,
Yeah.
whatever.
Back to the
Cartouche.
family?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Who else would it go back
Well, you're stopped from him on account of the state of blank or on other authorities for clothing received on entering service. So he's charged. He's being they owe him a certain amount of pay, and they're
Right.
withholding things that he's used in service
Used,
that he's expected to pay for.
to? And if he is indebted to say he owed $2 to the laundress, does the family pay it or the town
They're going
pay
to
it?
withhold it from his pay.
Pay, yeah.
They're going to withhold it from his pay.
Yeah.
And he paid it to him.
But yes, this paper would go back,
Yeah.
perhaps with some artifact of his, almost like sending back some evidence of the fact that he is dead, And I would
The
think
instructions.
during those times in the Civil
If you
War,
flip it over, the
yeah.
instructions are on the back.
yeah,
2 of these certificates or duplicates are to be given to each volunteer soldier who may be discharged previously to the discharge of his company,
which
that he
could
may
be
at
dead.
once receive from the paymaster the pay, etc., due him, and the captain or other officer commanding the company will certify to the act of the delivery of the duplicate certificates as these certificates the soldier is entitled to his discharge and should also send his discharge to the paymaster. They have the payment endorsed on it. The discharge is to be given back to the soldier by the paymaster, the latter only retaining as his voucher the duplicate certificates.
But look at note 2. If the soldier is entitled to pay for the use of his horse.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, the company commander will certify that. 3, it has to do with the laundress. Must be entered in the muster roll, the money and all that. This blank will be used for deceased volunteers as well as others.
Others.
So this would have come back.
Yep.
I'm just imagining, like when you read what the attitudes were, especially about death in the Civil War, the books that have been written about it. I mean, they were getting into seances at that time
Yeah.
afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just wondering that they would send back some sort of something that was attached to him
Notify the family,
by the
town
family,
clerk.
and that's what they would consider as being that connection to him. And exactly.
Blotting paper.
Yeah.
I love the fact
Exactly.
that, just as a little aside, there are a couple of sheets of blotting paper right at the very end of the book.
Yeah, I know.
Just in case.
But
Here,
can you
tell what,
imagine
slide
with
that
the
down to
writing
Joanne,
on?
I'll tuck it back in where
Yes.
where I found it.
That.
That's kind of
That
cool.
is kinda
That's kind of
cool.
cool in and of itself. That's
Yeah.
the minutia. That's the paperwork of the.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass
Put
that
that
over
on
to
top
you.
of that.
We had fun with that.
Oh my gosh. But they did. They manufactured all these books probably pretty early on.
Holliston State and Military Aid Disbursements. Just a little notebook, but again, I presume probably.
Probably notes and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the date in there is April 1900.
Well,
This is
post 6
post-
GAR.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. One that didn't make it with the rest of the books over.
From June 1895, removed from something deceased May 1897. All right, so this is later.
Yeah, they were keeping track of,
Payments to
Yeah.
veterans.
Yeah, I mean, the members of Post 6 GAR,
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the earliest GAR posts in
Yeah,
Massachusetts,
here's another
because
one,
number 6, yeah.
1886
Yeah.
militia, 1886 militia books, militia rolls. This is interesting. Okay,
Oh.
militia roll 1886. The militia continued on after the end of the Civil War.
Yes, it did, the honorary,
Yeah, I don't know how.
Well, it was an honorary thing,
Yeah.
they, Colonel Flagg,
Right.
he never saw a battle.
No, right.
Yeah.
So this is interesting, but not necessarily tied directly to Company B. But it's
But it's in there.
It's part of the military
It's part of
history
the-
of Holliston.
It
It's-
is, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I
it was a fraternal organization
Well, right. I'm
at
looking right.
best.
The next thing I can see is a bundle of papers marked Holliston's Enrolled Militia, 1905, which is interesting, and it keeps it.
It keeps it, yeah.
1901.
Yeah.
1901. So clearly there are military records in here post Civil War, which is kind of interesting because it documents that this stuff continued.
Oh,
and it's
1886, yeah.
1901, and the same pink ribbon though,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
makes you wonder about the
yeah.
when this was all packaged up.
Yeah, militia roll, 1886, yeah, I mean, it was a men's organization, and I think they, some of them were sitting around telling war stories. Thank you for listening. This is Joanne Hulbert for Heartbeat of Holliston.